Hey guys and girls, welcome back to our video series to help you prepare for your ACT quizzes. We're looking at question number 18 in our ACT practice test, and we are told that I is the square root of -1, and we are to simplify the square root of 9 plus the square root of -16. So maybe this is the first time you have really run into the square root of a negative number, and we need to talk about that. So we were given this little bit of information that I is equal to the square root of -1. So let's think about what that actually means for I to be the square root of -1. Well, if we so let's suppose that there is a real number such that, well, let's call that real number r, such that r squared is equal to -1. So that's what we are going to base our investigation around, right? So we're going to assume that r squared equals -1 and it's a real number. Well, there are three cases, right, that we need to investigate, right? So case one would be r greater than 0. So r could be positive, but r squared would be greater than 0. And r cannot be positive. Well, case two, well, let's suppose r is exactly equal to 0, but then r squared is equal to 0. And that wouldn't work either. And then let's take a look at case 3, where r is less than 0. Well, if I take a negative number and I multiply it by another negative number, or multiply it by itself, we would find that r squared is still greater than 0. Therefore, there is no number in the set of real numbers such that r squared equals -1. So when mathematicians, particularly Rene Descartes, realized this, there was sort of a crisis there, and Descartes got around it by defining I as the imaginary unit, or the square root of -1. So define I as the square root of -1. That's what we're doing, and that's what they did in the question stem for question number 18 on our ACT quiz. So you might not have been familiar with the square root of -1 being called I, but you could have just gotten to the solution anyway with what you know about simplifying radicals from middle school years. So the square root of 9 is just 3. And then the square root of 16 is just 4 and the square root of negative 1, we now know is I. So we now know all of these. So we now know every bit of this. And we know that the square root of negative 16 would be the square root of negative 1 times the square root times 16. We'll just keep it under the radical for the time being. But if I was to simplify that further, I would have 4 on the square root of negative 1 when I do radical simplification. And then that would just be 4i. So what do we have here with the square root of negative 9? Sorry, the square root of 9 plus the square root of negative 16. Well, that would be the same thing as 3, which is what the first term is equal to, plus 4i. And it is important to remind you that the 3 and the 4i are not like terms. So together we have 3 plus 4i, and that is a new type of number. But you've seen things like 2 plus root 5 before. This is just the same kind of number, and it obeys sort of similar rules to the arithmetic rules that you have learned already with square roots or cube roots or things like that. We don't combine unlike terms. So we do the same thing here. We don't combine 3 and 4i any further to get one of the distractor answer choices, 7i. And we take the positive square root of 4 and not the negative one to get 4i. So, and we also take this square root as the positive square root of negative 1, which is just I. So if we squared negative I, we'd also get negative 1, but we are taking this as, by definition, the positive square root of negative 1, which is just I. So we get 4i for the second term, and we do not take a minus in the middle. So finally, I want to leave you with one other really important idea. If a is greater than 0, then the square root of negative a is equal to I on the square root of a. And that is a very important fact that will help you in working with complex numbers. So let's think about the main ideas that we need to take away from this, being that I is the square root of negative 1. The square root of negative a is I on the square root of a. And that when we have the opportunity to add real and imaginary numbers, the real not having the I with it, the imaginary carrying the imaginary unit I and being some multiple of I, that would be a pure imaginary number. And when we add them together, we get a complex number. So we have 3 plus 4i as our complex number. So that would be the final solution to our question number 18. So thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.